You can see that the horse kind of rubbed up against the backside of the maximum security. Yes, I don't think there was enough to for that horse to be able to eat the back as close as they wanted to.
That's exactly that I worked with employees from the I liked it, and I asked the other side, but these two people have to jump in my research lines and
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things you make it do, you're watching a really different and then it's college or
So we are going to not sure if people have met Kate Barrett before, but she has joined us. Kate is a kinesiology faculty member, or was a faculty member, and also one of the folks that really supports the department and through several of the boards. So yeah, they are awards. There's a variety of awards, professional awards. So she's joined us just for Marcus. Thank you. And then we do have other faculty. Jen might be the only one. And you guys have seen in the past few other days, there's been people in and out. Yeah. Okay. You're up.
Okay. Thank you everybody for coming in. My name is Martha Rivera. I'm a full-time assistant athletic trainer at Winthrop University. My dissertation title is Mental Health Referral Efficacy in College Athletic Trainers. And this actually started when I first started my position. I had a coach come up to me and say, one of my athletes has an eating disorder, what do I do? And I turned to her and I said, I have no idea how to help you. So that's where this came from. So one of the big statistics that a lot of individuals now can see is that students between the ages of 18 and 25 experience a variety of mental health disorders. There's over 19 million young adults that are experiencing or having symptoms of a mental health issue and or an actual illness. College students are among this population. Okay? They experience different stressors that are different than their counterparts, different than the general student body, the pressure to perform, their schedule, which is, controlled by other people. They find that they actually have a higher susceptibility of developing mental health issues or illnesses. So then it's kind of like, what do we do next? How do we help this? And one of the things that has been brought about is that athletic trainers who work directly with student athletes play a pivotal role. So they are there for that student athlete. They have the ability, or should at least have the ability, to recognize the early warning signs of these mental health issues and also when to refer for appropriate care to a mental health provider. Okay. So in 2013, there was a multidisciplinary task force that developed mental health best practices. So this document has different key facets about how to promote and to support student-athlete mental well-being. Okay? Part of this document is to give advice on what a university and athletics department can do. And one of the trainings that they have suggested was called the Question, Persuade, Refer, or QPR training. Okay, so this QPR training they've suggested is to help people be comfortable with talking to individuals who are displaying early warning signs of suicide, who might be in a crisis of suicide, all right, and then knowing how to refer. Okay, so the course really is around suicidal ideation and working with those individuals. However, research states that suicide is not the only mental health, we don't want to call it a condition, but it's what leads to. So the mental health issues lead to suicidal ideation or even non-suicidal self-injury. Okay, so Rouse states that in college student athletes, there are actually a lower incidence of suicide rates compared to the general population between that age group. Okay? But Auerbach and Neal are saying they see more mental health issues and conditions such as anxiety and depression that then lead to suicidal ideation or self-harm. Okay, so QPR is kind of great for when you're in that final step of a crisis. However, we have to kind of look back and see what can we do now before we get to that point. To get to that point, we have to talk about athletic trainers, okay? So one of the things is we need to find, where are athletic trainers in their set of, are they ready to take this on? So NCAA is saying, you have to play this role, so are you prepared, okay? In our competencies for education, we have to have, according to that, the ability to intervene and to refer these individuals. And these individuals, they're referring to have mental health issues or conditions. However, athletic trainers lack formal training. Right? It has been shown that within the curriculum that they can learn that ability to intervene and refer in any aspect of any curriculum. So it can be a part of a one lecture slide, one time in their whole career as an athletic training student. It could be an entire course that they drop in different information. So program directors who develop their curriculums have freedom to do what they want and to interpret as long as they believe that they have determined that the ability to intervene and refer is a check off. I taught you this lesson, it's been checked off. Okay? One of the things that research is either limited in is the actual formal training part. Okay? There has not been research that I have come to find that shows athletic trainers talking about mental health in any form of training on how to approach and refer student athletes. Okay? So we came across this course. So this is a mental health first aid course. It was developed in Australia in 2008. This course is designed to improve recognition of early warning signs of mental issues or illnesses, increase confidence, and then identify the appropriate professionals to refer for further help. Okay? The topics that include in this course is anxiety, depression, psychosis, substance use disorder, suicide, and non-suicidal self-injury. What's also within this course is that they have different modules. So they actually have one for veterans, they have one for public safety officers, nursing students. They have a youth one. So this course is growing, and as of today, there's over 1 million individuals certified in this mental health first aid. Okay? But this course has not been researched within an athletics population at all, as of today. So my purpose is to evaluate the influence of this course, this mental health first aid course, on college athletic trainers' confidence in their knowledge and their referral for those that have mental health illnesses. My specific aims is to determine the effect it has, and then eventually evaluate what that course is based on participant feedback. So my methods involve a lot of surveys, okay? So the first pre and post course surveys, they were given a pre-labeled packet to remain anonymous. They were recruited from within the mental health first aid course. So they were already signed, ready to go, and then they were either emailed or given a script before, and that's how I recruited my participants. So the first one, we collected demographics. Then I talked about, it's a mental health efficacy questionnaire. So this rates their confidence levels on a Likert scale from 0 to 10. And one of these questions could be, how confident are you in referring a student athlete to appropriate medical care? Okay. The next question is the referral knowledge questionnaire. This is a true-false questionnaire, and it was testing their knowledge to see if they knew when to refer, or in certain scenarios. I did a mental health first aid course effectiveness form. This form was based off of the theory of planned behavior. That's how the course was developed itself. So I looked at different aspects and mainly focused on the self-efficacy aspect of that questionnaire. And then post-course, they repeated the same questionnaires, except for the behavioral section, because this one was stating how many referrals have you made within the last year. And so it was not appropriate to continue on, we just needed the one question. They also did a mandatory course evaluation form. So mental health first aid requires an evaluation form, and it gauges their overall perception of the course, the presenter, and then practical application, and how they view it to relay back into their setting. So the reason why, whether it was a family, colleagues, working, how they found it was practical. They also participated in focus group interviews immediately following the course. And then 1 month later, they were submitted a questionnaire link through Qualtrics to repeat their questions to, again, measure to see how their confidence levels have either changed, stayed the same, or decreased. So for my AIM-1 results, I had 8 certified athletic trainers that participated. We had 2 separate groups. I had a group of 5 in one and a group of 3 in another. 7 females with 1 male, 5 individuals from a Division I university institution, and then 3 from the Division III. And the average age was 26.9. Okay, so here, if you look, this was the referral knowledge. So out of 10 correct, their post or pre was actually very, very high. It was 9.75. It decreased as it went through. So looking through and going, that doesn't make sense. They started with a high level of referral knowledge, but went down. But when I looked back and looked through some of the specific questions, they changed their answer on some. And one of the questions, I could see how they changed, because one, it says, is a student athlete who is suicidal is attention seeking. Okay. Within the course, we actually have a discussion about the difference between attention seeking and attention needing. And those individuals can interpret that question either way. As, is it a cry for help, or are they actually trying to seek, they're trying to be attention seeking in a negative light. So that could be one reason why we saw those results decrease. The overall course confidence, everything was great. It worked out for me, which is what we like to see. So here we have that mental health efficacy. This is their pre right here. And so out of 10, we saw a significant improvement in their overall average, and it still stayed relatively high between post and 1 month follow-up. The same goes for the course evaluation or course effectiveness. It jumps from 3.13 to 4.38, and then again stayed high. So there was significant improvement between pre and post course. There was not significant between post and 1 month follow-up, because of course courses results were already high, and they still stayed high from pre to 1 month following up. Okay, and their overall course confidence, 4.64. And so this one was out of 5 right here again. So this was part of that evaluation right at the end. So they still felt very confident after taking this course in their skills. In regards to participant feedback, I went through their interviews and pulled out some of the key phrases and key terms and created sub-themes. So these are the sub-themes I created. One, they found the course was very helpful. So taking that knowledge that they already have, and then now taking the tools and bringing it together. So they said, putting it all together, that was helpful for them. So a lot of them have learned about mental health in some other form of training, whether it was their undergraduate work or a course they've taken, anything, but then taking it together. Another aspect was about usefulness. So it wasn't that they just learned, this is what you do. It was actually now taking it and using an action plan and applying it to different scenarios. So it's not, this is what depression is. It becomes, this is how you talk to an individual. This is how you refer. So they found it very helpful. And then the last one was applicable. So they said any individual who interacts with a student athlete should absolutely have this training. So it starts with athletic trainers and it moves on to different individuals within their athletics departments. And then it helps within the community. So overall, my main thing, when I use those three terms together, I find the word for practicality. So this course is practical for athletic trainers in a college setting because they now not only have the knowledge, but they have the tools and the resources to become that pivotal role that NCAA wants them to be. The only thing that they wanted to see changes in was more about an eating disorder section. So the course actually used to have an eating disorder section, but it made it 12 hours versus an 8-hour certification. So they've removed it, but they still have scenarios that we can bring up and talk about it. So they get a glimpse of an eating disorder, but not a full section anymore. So in conclusion, overall, this course has found that it's improved confidence. So now they know how to refer, how to mediate, how to have that difficult conversation if somebody is experiencing a mental health issue, what to say, what is appropriate, when to refer, and then who to refer to. The practicality is that this course could benefit athletic trainers in the future. They can see that there is a difference in their skill set already, that now they have a tool set, they have something else. And they refer it and apply it to something like CPR and first aid. Okay. That way, we'll talk more about it if I get to it. Okay. So, my implications. This is what I would love to do with it. Is I want to see all athletic trainers become certified in mental health first aid. This is my big picture. This is my goal, my lofty goal. And especially those working in adult populations, being certified in adult mental health first aid. We can model it like the CPR first aid certification requirements. All athletic trainers are required to maintain their certification every 2 years as part of their renewal process. And so this course, this certification is good for 2 years. So you model it with CPR first aid, you just submit your certification. And the recertification process for this course is 90 minutes, an online course for $30. When we move on to athletic training students, the implications, they are actually changing the standards. In 2022, all athletic trainers are moving to a master's level program. So there's a new standard where it says that they have to identify and refer who have behavioral health conditions. And the behavioral health conditions that they talk about are suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, psychosis, mania, eating disorders, and attention deficit disorders. The mental health first aid course covers almost all. And it has been shown in other universities, and not in the United States, actually in Australia, they've embedded this mental health first aid course within university courses already. So it has already been done before. So incorporating it or offering a 1-day certification and required to have it for your board of certification. Okay, so hopefully we'll see you in the future. So these are the references. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
Have you done anything with the NTA to see if that can be implemented on a larger scale?
So my goal as part of my dissemination, I am applying to the NITA Foundation in this fall to try and present this research to NITA next year. But my goal is, because I only had 8 participants, I want to get more individuals involved. And one of the things that we found when I was recruiting participants to come and take this class, athletic trainers, winter is not a great time. Learned that, I am an athletic trainer, but learned that the hard way. Yes, some of us have winter breaks, but some of us don't. So the individuals that I recruited, they actually all prefer the summer. So I already have a list of individuals and schools that are going to come and take this course to add to my population. And then move forward and present it at NAT hopefully next year.
How much does it cost for an institution or athletic department to, bring in a lot of new certification? Do you know what the cost is for that?
So the cost, and it depends on where you're taking it from. So the cost, if you were to budget for it, is about $20 a person to come in based on your population. You have to have a minimum of 5 individuals in one class. and the maximum you can have is 30 individuals, but per person it would be $20. The way I was able to do it, our local national hospital, Eastern Health, has a grant to offer this course for free in our community. So I actually was able to use and be an instructor through Eastern Health to then offer this course for free for our surrounding area.
And one other question, sorry. So do you think that, I mean, you said you had, what was it, 13 participants?
I have 8 participants.
Or 8, sorry. And they all had a really high level of knowledge coming in. How do you think that translates into, you've worked with other athletic trainers, you've seen, do you think that's representative of the level of knowledge? Or do you think that's higher for some reason? I mean,
I would say it's higher than your average population because they do have training, because it is part of a standard that's already within their curriculum as coming in. But looking at research with other individuals who are your public population, they actually started with a low level of referral knowledge, and that increased as time went on as well.
Can you talk more about the course itself and how it might be a superior alternative to some of the other trainings out there? Because I know it primarily sounds like focuses on recognizing symptoms and referring, which is similar to some of the existing programs. So is it just the difference that it's not focused specifically on crisis situations, or what?
So the course is given an action plan. So the action plan is called ALGE. So it's different steps to go through different events. So the first one is assess for risk of suicide or self-harm. And then the next one is listen non-judgmentally, give reassurance and information. And then it's encourage self-support and other strategies. And then encourage appropriate professional help. So it's actually getting a plan of what to do. And then we teach the plan within the different scenarios that go on. So we teach them, what is effective listening? What are the appropriate things to say if an individual is experiencing symptoms or you have concerns? And then what to do, so if we're not at a crisis at this moment, but knowing, coming to this individual and saying, what are some support strategies or self-help and things that you have done that have worked for you in the past? So say somebody's having an anxiety attack, but they're not in a crisis where you need to be calling 911 or the behavioral health unit. You can say, what has worked for you? And so we teach them with this action plan on how to work through the different scenarios. And again, they're trying to relate it like a CPR and first aid model. So for first aid CPR, you know how to recognize if somebody might be having a heart attack. So if they go down the ground, you have the skills to do CPR and try and continue to give them help and care until further help arrives. And so that's the same philosophy that this mental health first aid course is. It's giving a tool set to know how to help a person in need, or also as an early intervention, early recognition. So that way you can say, I am concerned, I recognize that this is what's going on with you, what can we do to get you help? So that way we don't come to the part where it is a crisis.
And then a follow-up to Dr. Farrell's question about the knowledge. I think what you're getting at is the athletic trainers themselves have pretty high knowledge.
Yes.
They're like a 9.5 out of 10 was the average. I think you said that it decreased, but actually it went from like 9.5, like 6 to 9.5. So that's meaningfully, and it wasn't significant. So either way, they're getting 9 out of 10 correct each time. So is it that, would you argue that a course like this, the athletic trainers are maybe equipped with knowledge about mental health, general knowledge, but this is more focused on improving the translation to the skills?
Absolutely.
The knowledge?
Yes. Yeah. So I think that they do have a course, especially talking about in our feedback in the focus group about their high level of knowledge. Because I've asked them, what is your experience in mental health to start with? And some are saying, I took a whole course in sports psychology and we had a topic in mental health. And I had one individual state that they had somebody come and it was an actual behavioral health physician that talked to them about the signs and symptoms. So for them, this course was more, again, applicable because they could take their knowledge and now have something to do with it. Like they know how to recognize and know when something needs to refer, but it's that in between. Is that coming in and talking to a person and knowing what to say without truly coming and counseling an individual, which would be outside our scope of practice. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about, I want to talk about where you're going to take this information in the future.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned about maybe going to the NATA, various groups. Do you have any fear that because of your low end, that it might be flat out rejected, say that it's not representative of a larger population? And if that happens, that might really set you back. Have you thought about doing a follow-up study using more people to help bolster these results, so that somebody just doesn't say, no, we can't give you any money, or we can't do this?
Yes, so I was talking with Andrew about that with presenting. So a lot of the athletic trainers that were interested for this past winter that couldn't participate in the data collection are actually scheduled to continue the training this summer. So I will actually have between 30 to 50 individuals more scheduled for this summer. And I emailed out, I did the numbers yesterday, I emailed out 21 universities, so roughly 160, and out of those 21, 4 of the universities were already certified in this course. So it's starting to gain popularity, but there just isn't any research until this that I am aware of that has been involved in athletics population and athletic training.
Did you get certified as a full start?
Yes.
Is that hard?
The last I wanted to make sure they do course. Okay, so I'm making a new GA so I can get so that was my son. It just works. Right now, I'm yeah, they oh, well. Wait, I did one button.
Or. I just want you to be real. But so from her, it's doing the actual commissioning programs, everything. Yes. That's what she wants.
Camera. Yeah.
So that makes sense. Now that you got the results, it seems like the service level of the apparatus that Now, so you were leaving before graduation, right? You're here. You have
This one was there.
Oh, today? Oh, all right. All right, well, that's, I mean, there's sometimes. Right. Yeah.
And the first
Yes.
research study
Okay.
done in the United States.
Yeah, well, you can always just roll it out.
It's very early.
Yeah, good. All right, well, I look forward to seeing your vote.
Okay. But now I just need to find out what my roles can be. My history, mental health. Yeah,
Thank you.
That's what my boss calls me that. And Stephanie was like, do you have any mental health problems? This is our liaison right here in athletic training. I was like, that's your title. I was, so I want that to be my title. Because I think after the
Little jump driving thing.
Can I come in something?
I didn't know I jump driving.
You
No,
can-
I wouldn't. I would,
Especially.
That's the one that we've been using so far.
Well, you're not screwed. It's really.
So this one goes forward. I know it is. But I guess this one's, because this one's bigger. Yeah, but this is regular.
Yeah, like the last thing.
I did it, I mean, go back.
But if I was in my hand, I was like,
Mine, but it's this.
why did it do that? And
See what I have.
when he told me 5 minutes, I was, no, it's the one thing, it was not the one. Because the one here didn't do anything, it barely responded.
Mine didn't do it.
Yeah, and I didn't want to, because that
I never used the time when I was in.
And then it buzzed.
It was. You know,
I still have more to say, but.
Oh, you
I have a lot. I don't think that was a negative.
And she kept trying to do this in the middle of that. Or maybe she was like,
You know, when first says no.
what is that happening?
like I said.
And then kept going. I nodded that. I saw that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody's signed the poster. Official signature that I'm gonna do money. And the
Yes, I got you. Okay. I'm gonna get
I'm having to
I know that's exactly what I told her.
Yeah, that's one of those areas where it's. Yeah, well.
If I just go like this, it takes care of it all. I got it though. Of course.
No time.
Yes.
And of course, I tell you. It's fine. I realized something. It's true on our project, but you can use it. But still. Anyway, Jenny Moore and I.
That's good.
Exactly.
Because you know,
That's not where the ball is.
Oh, no,
Well, that's interesting.
And I
Which is Dig shells.
I'm sorry, everybody got a copy.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a lot of results, that's what.
Because it doesn't get.
So there's a separate faculty piece.
So it's
Overarching things, faculty and students.
I think they're gonna, we're
some in, some out.
I,
You know,
took existing surveys and four elements, like I speak, one type survey. Actually, I used two type surveys, one for faculty and then one for self-efficacy. And then I used a portion of another survey and then academics. So I collected and put it together. Because people would, by the way, look at certain elements, but I'll get to look at.
I was like,
I'll come speak and get you guys.
I remember talking because we had the furniture company. Okay.
So, yeah, so.
My neighbors who work there.
Reliability of the.
Yeah.
What is all?
Well, what's funny is they want me the teaching workers to I'm like, I don't know, but we have a library central office here.
Or like a workspace, what does that look like?
So an active workstation, so there's different kinds. They make them to the company that is the chemist. They specialize in textiles. They're opening now. So basically, you can actually use a website with a desktop. And you can get an individual one, or you can get like, where there's a freezer company like attached to it, and then same thing with steppers. You can, but those are a little, those are because of the weight of the students. Like those, like the stair steppers or whatever, then they're sitting standardized.
Can you collaborate, like someone across the desk, like
Right.
engineering, and have them do it?
So I'm already working on that. I'm working with physical therapy. They already do this in their classrooms for their. Right. Well, and there's ergonomic problems, so it's not enough. Actually, and that's what these desks are promoted to at K-12, but they don't have them for learning support, you know. So they actually have to have a split rest. Because ergonomic is this, not this.
It does too.
Because this should put some pressure on your left side. So you have to have this relieving pressure, have the effect, and switch back and forth to that. And the active like to absorb it. Otherwise, you're just creating nothing. You're creating the line work all over again. I just work.
Some sort of outline follow the.
It takes about, for students, it takes about 2 weeks to acclimate. For adults, it takes less than about 1 month to acclimate.
I tell my students though.
So if you had the chloride, we're able to secure it,
Well, so you're on
Well,
I like to more attorneys like there's more steppers too, but if you want to have so what you there's like a steel bar like this, it comes up to the bottom of the stepper, balance it, and then there's a table top here, you literally just shake it back and forth like this as you do. So you might be sitting like this. And it's real fluid and natural. And then the lights are the machine and that's maybe fewer noise, which is what I thought was.
Still supposed to make those?
No, they're only made by kids.
Okay.
That's the
So
only.
still case.
No, that's why here, their contract is why they want to take this.
But 20,000.
well, and I think.
A lot of them Well, and that was my original proposal, was let's just go,
But they're all in the
that
back
project,
project,
or
so
students that are, we try to get them come in and they don't want to sit down because of whatever injury they're doing, or students not like or
and then they kind of
and they're not
turn
sure
it into a quality improvement project. But they turn it into
And I,
You
that's
kind
my
of forced to
suggestion.
choose, like, okay.
What I suggested is,
You to know what you.
so that you have a classroom, and that's different, and I. Oh, yeah, I get one. So if you want things like
Previously, nobody told you that,
yeah,
I've got one,
possibly.
I've got 3 captions, partly protected and missing elements.
So, I mean, yes,
They kind of detailed out. We do this here, for this point, we do things in
salary
I
ideas.
used to change the detail description and so.
But it's not a
Yeah.
revolutionary idea. It's just taking what they already do and transition.
But like we don't have the results.
Well, and then what is
We don't have other elements in there, that's not on me, that's on you.
like they have. And now they're trying to.
You make a,
So.
you have this form that I need you guys to complete. Your committee chair will sign off. It's saying that you passed your dissertation. Well, like, that's up to them.
So we sign it, and then when the date comes, they will sign it.
Yeah, so hopefully they will, sign off on these, probably tomorrow. That way, all the top part is filled out. First,
Just about our name of it.
yeah, our school is, HHS, our department is kinesiology. Your degree is an EdD, your major is kinesiology. And then, the second thing that I have to turn to the grad school is signature pages. So some,
She did my updated one.
right, so if you have a title change, you have to send me a new one. You sent yours.
They had me send it to them. I sent it to the committee last night.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, Pam just has to forward it.
Okay.
I
Did
just,
you
I
send it
said
to her?
directly.
Oh, that was smart. Do you want me to do that?
Sure. So your approval page has this, thing on the back, and it has a space for a signature. So it's a little bit different than maybe what your dissertation. This didn't have a room for signature. Some did, but it doesn't have to. The one that I need now has the room for signature.
So we signed that one.
I don't think
No, we don't
you
sign
should.
anything.
No.
But I might need it from, well, if you create it, because it has like the right margin.
Okay, but I haven't gone through formatting yet, so mine's not right.
And that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
I was gonna be like, I know that page is off because it kept throwing everything else off and it kept, and so I was just like, you know what?
And it might be the case that I have to get another one from you, but
That's okay.
in the meanwhile, it serves as a placeholder. So that's kind of like, I always think about like when you turn stuff into the grad schools, like as long as something's there, it's a good placeholder. They won't get mad at you. your graduation.
think it's mine.
That's
What do you need from us right now?
So right now you're gonna fill out this form, and then after you've like done your presentation, send me, if they've told you to change your title at all, send it to me. If they haven't, probably just go send it to me. With, yeah, this one with all the lines.
Is that all of ours or just?
So these are the ones that you just sent me for your abstract, so they may have not changed. So I have to send those, but those are different.
Do we need those to be given to us?
No, those are the ones that you sent me. Like, that's what, we're not on there now.
So double check out.
Yes, double check it.
Oh, well, we emailed her. So she had just sent her asterisk.
And disseminate them. Yes, Sandy over there. See, like some of them, like really what was needed for the abstract was just this page. Some of you put that one, it doesn't really matter, it's just like the announcement. So these are just the announcement pages. So these are, yeah.
So basically page,
That one
First page of the
is
document.
that's not due until.
First page.
well, it's the title page, and the second page is the
This
signature.
is actually what the instructions are. So there's two versions of the title.
I kept trying to edit the rest of
There's the official one.
I'd be like, so I will cut that. And I was like, okay.
And truly, if you guys were, if you were like on campus, I wouldn't even talk about this right now. But because this is one I sent you guys, I try to collect.
You have mine here.
That's the first page of.
First page is only share. Well, it has to look like this, and I can send you a link that shows you, like, it's on the PDF, actually.
So you don't need, so it's not the it's the actual title page of your dissertation.
Dr. was kind of upset with me for this, because I followed what you sent out, and it had where we were gonna be. And she got upset, and she just take that off right now. And I was like, okay, so I took it off, and, okay.
Yeah, so you follow the directions.
Okay.
So this is what it's supposed to look like when we announce. They are presenting, right? And then this is what it's supposed to look like when you're submitting it. Like, I've presented, I'm done, it's every single thing on my dissertation is completed, I'm probably okay. Now, obviously,
But the,
we're not there yet,
they
but
need those
I'm not
signatures.
gonna see. So,
Right.
that's what you need.
Because I have another page.
Because I need to.
Yeah, it's just the first, yeah, right after that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
What do I do?
What?
I have, and
I
it's
think
not.
so, because they have to sign them.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one of the grad.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
came on. I know.
We have to follow the template.
Yeah.
And, yeah, but we were, that's the people that, I know, but that was March. The March people didn't, that was when they.
Yeah, so. You sticking around out there?
All right, so that's done.
Record.
Let's do that.
Yeah, yeah. Are you on the like?
Have you guys seen this, have you guys seen this page, the ETD?
Yes.
So if you go to the grad school's homepage, you go to current students, it'll bring you to this thing right here. There's thesis and dissertation. And so there's the thesis and dissertation manual, the inspection and formatting, submit your thesis. And so if you click on there, it'll show you how to make that title page.
Oh, yeah, no, mine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then.
And you're always supposed to have. Oh, I didn't. So mine.
So this is only one.
Yeah.
One of them.
And
That's their approval.
Sorry,
So we could one.
university.
Yeah, that's wonderful, yeah.
So that's what you retire. It's actually the same paper.
And that's part-time. So that's,
I'll send it to you on the link.
Yeah, I got access to that.
And it has the approval pages.
he gives you change. Did you change the website? Just that here's his number, goes full semester. Yeah. Because that's the thing I worried about. Was the part-time here. Yeah. Yeah. And you keep your office out. Yeah.
I was gonna be a friend. I think I'm, when I see it, I go, oh, yeah.
I wondered about, you know, that. And then he can, well, because he was.
So it's called the approval page on that document. On that, preparation.
So, the date was yesterday, CTHS class.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know,
It's correct. It's
you know, so yesterday's date, yesterday, I was there.
Just keep it.
He agreed. So, I mean, he still does all.
Was that the wrong one?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking that, and I'm like, I already put this out.
Okay.
I had to.
Now, this is.
There you
You're
go.
on the pretty much.
Yeah, I got you. So,
Yeah, right there, that.
that's the great talent.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's results on preliminary.
Results of oral exam.
You want
Oh, is,
yeah.
yes, this is oral.
You're supposed to.
Oh, is this our comp, oral comp?
You're supposed to.
You already did one. No.
Right, so
No.
this isn't because of oral.
This is actually this is the final one.
You're right, it's defense, and ours says defense, and yours just says oral examination schedule. That's not right.
Yeah. And that's surprising, yeah, I'm tired.
Something that other workers can add. So are you, okay, I'm sorry, just to clarify.
Yeah.
So you need, I just sent you my Title 50, which does not have the direct routing on it, but it's there. And you can do my flexible. It has the lines, but I jerry rigged them in there because when I tried to follow the directions from the grad school, it messed up the rest of my documents. Even though I had to go to a new page or section break.
And that's like, sorry. I was out the hallway. You know, they literally disappear and then that one semester that's it's like,
No, because it didn't say.
That's why I didn't tell.
you know, and you're really writing. You know, and it just.
I know it does.
You know.
I worked out.
Korean mail, and that's the right I know this is horrible.
Yeah, that's not.
So Greg, what did he get?
I got it.
Here. I'm gonna find it, you know, that I sent you in March.
Jenny.
I do remember you sent something that said how to do a signature page or something like that. And I went back and I found it, but when I didn't repeat it, didn't go to the correct document. So I was like, okay, this doesn't matter. So I went to this and the Valerie's PowerPoint and followed that, and something wasn't intuitive. Something was way off. And I don't know, I don't know if it's missing a step or something that form And I was like, that's what I felt like. I was like, maybe I'm
And they were.
Okay, I just wanted to double check on that. I was like, I
You're.
I'm just.
Yeah. What was on that? What are you looking for? Front page.
The title page just says the chair or a co-chair. Correct.
She knows it.
Yeah, look.
Well, there's a title page and an approval page. Because it really did become particularly with Verizon. The Telegraph.
Yeah, she did.
Horse racing.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So no, she didn't fix the page for me. All right. So Kim, I know you're ready. Everybody. You are ready to go.
Okay, my name is Kim Clark. I am a faculty member at UNCG Charlotte, and I work in the Department of Kinesiology, and I serve as the program director for our Masters in Respiratory Care program. So, part of my study, what I wanted to do was look at evidence-based practice in our profession. So there's a lot of literature out there with regards to other professions, and athletic training has quite a bit, occupational training, or occupational therapy has a lot, and allied health in general, and nursing. But we have very limited in respiratory therapy. So the premise of this actually started over 10 years ago when the AARC, or the American Association for Respiratory Care, commissioned a task force to look at what's healthcare going to look like in 2015 and beyond? So we're already in the beyond part. What competencies do we need to have to meet the healthcare demands? And then what educational requirements are going to be needed to achieve those competencies to meet the healthcare demands? So there was three separate conferences, and I actually got to represent North Carolina in the third conference to talk about what education and credentials we needed. And so we unanimously agreed, pretty much, that we need to have an entry-level bachelor's program to be able to achieve all these things. Well, the reality of it is, it's really probably not going to happen anytime soon, and I will probably be retired before it does happen. So therefore, the vast majority of respiratory therapists who enter practice have associate degrees, roughly 80 to 85%. We do have approximately 60 baccalaureate programs across the country, and we have maybe a half a dozen entry-level master's programs, and then a handful of degree advancement programs, which is the program that I oversee. Evidence-based practice has been established as a core competency for us. And so what that means is we are supposed to take the best available research evidence along with our clinical expertise and experience while considering patient preferences and values to make an informed decision for the care of that patient. Do we do that? Inconsistently. So what I wanted to do was look at the factors associated with the use of evidence-based practice and look at faculty teaching in associate degree respiratory therapy programs and post-professional students. Those post-professional students were enrolled in our UNC Charlotte Bachelor's in Respiratory Care program. It's a degree completion program. So the vast majority of students are being taught by these faculty members. So we only had maybe a couple out of state, but roughly 98% of our students received their associate degrees in North Carolina. So it was a pretty good group to match up. Now we've had a lot of turnover in our faculty, so, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So my aims were to determine the knowledge, self-efficacy, learning experience, and use of evidence-based practice among faculty and post-professional students. They were separated out, so I looked at faculty and post-professional students, but I am going to talk a little bit about similarities because this group comes from the same mix. So really, the main thing that separates the faculty and the students to some degree is just the fact that they already have their degrees, but experience and other things are very similar because they just come right out of clinical practice into associate degree programs to teach. So there's not a lot of difference between them. Also look at the faculty and determine their teaching strategy and resources that they're using to teach evidence-based practice, and determine if there was a relationship of knowledge, self-efficacy, learning experiences to the use of evidence-based practice among this post-professional student population. So administered a self-administered questionnaire. It was an online questionnaire for faculty and students to complete. There was a separate faculty survey because they had an additional element, additional section to talk about the strategies and resources that they use. And then there was a student survey. So everything else was the same, pretty much except for that extra section that the faculty completed. And then, of course, we use descriptive statistics and logistic regression to do our data analyses. So, results. And so I'll talk about them separately. It's hard to talk about them separately because they are so close together. But I'll talk about the students first. So the students, and this was on total score out of 6, so there were 6 items that they answered. And these were modeled after the concepts of evidence-based practice. So ask, acquire, appraise, apply, assess, and those types of things. So they had a fairly good average score. Out of that, there's self-efficacy in knowledge and self-efficacy in use. And I'll talk a little bit just about where the variation was in there. And then, of course, their learning experiences. So they have a somewhat favorable view of their learning experiences with regards to evidence-based practice. They demonstrated they felt fairly confident in their knowledge and use of evidence-based practice. So, but where they didn't have a lot of confidence came into how to critically appraise, how to apply the evidence, how to formulate a clinical question. So those were the areas that they weren't as confident in. And of course, their knowledge of that. So that's, if they were going to miss something, it was about, how do I use this to apply it to a patient? Or I don't understand statistics. And we don't teach students how to really do statistics in associate degree programs. And even the American Association for Respiratory Care said that's okay. That's something they can learn outside after they graduate. That's not a competency they need to have when they graduate. But I'll talk a little bit about that, why that's a problem. A future problem. Well, it's a problem now, but it'll continue to be a problem. Faculty were very similar. Mind you, they come from the same backgrounds. So some of our students were actually faculty members. They were clinical instructors in the program. So I had to separate them out and ask them to complete the faculty. So they didn't complete the student, they completed the faculty because they were actually faculty members at a community college in the BSRT program. Because you can teach as an instructor with an associate degree in the community college. So that's why they're so closely related. And some of them finish their bachelor's degree and go right into teaching. So they had less favorable views of their learning experiences. And I think some of that is just related to their reflection. They were able to, because they're teaching, they're able to think back, what did my learning experiences really entail? So I think could be why they had a little less favorable. So for using evidence-based practice, this is no surprise. Faculty are in the blue and students are in the green. So both faculty and students they search and read the literature more often, 6 times more. But when you get down to appraise the research literature and actually use the research literature, both groups do it less frequently. So that was common across all of them. And part of it is they're not comfortable with the critical appraisal piece. So if you're not comfortable with that, and then using the research literature, there's a lot of various reasons that could be for that. Being confident in it, but also time. And there's other barriers associated with that. So for teaching strategies, vast majority of the faculty said that they use the AARC clinical practice guidelines, which is great. But our clinical practice guidelines, we have lots of them, but maybe a half a dozen are evidence-based. The rest of them are expert opinion, and some of them are very old. So even though that is a good place to start students to learn basic concepts, because departments build their policies around these clinical practice guidelines. And some of them haven't been updated since 1995. Now, that could be because there's no more evidence on certain things, but we have some old ones out there and they're not evidence-based. That's why it's really important for them to learn how to use other resources in getting best practices. We can't just rely on the AARC clinical practice guidelines. So they are not using Cochrane Collaborative or evidence-based tutorials. Nobody used anything like that. There's lots of them out there. So those are things that we can work on. For teaching strategies, they like to use case studies, which is great. That is a perfect avenue or a venue to be able to incorporate evidence-based practice strategies. So that would be something that we can focus on, is how they're currently using their case studies. So let's incorporate some of these concepts into those case studies. How do you develop a clinical question? Because faculty do not teach them how to develop a clinical question. They'll say, yeah, we teach them how to search, but how do you do a search strategy if you don't have a good clinical question to guide your search strategy? So they use lit reviews, database searches, and case studies, but they're missing those specific pieces to be able to do it, to guide it. And so that's the piece that we can work on to help improve that element. Since they already use case studies, we have a good vehicle to start that education process with the faculty. So in the logistic regression, when I was looking at the knowledge, does knowledge, self-efficacy, and learning experiences impact the use of evidence-based practice? And in this study, no, it doesn't. So part of that could be the sample size. I had 54 students where I had complete surveys out of 189, and then I had 23 faculty members out of 35. So I had a fairly good representation of faculty, but a low number of students, which didn't surprise me with regards to students. But another piece of that could be that they perceive time as a barrier, and it is a major barrier to do that, and they don't see it modeled in practice. They might learn about it in school, but then they don't see anybody using it when they're in their clinical experiences. So those could be some factors that could be contributing to this. So basically, the study, students and faculty are fairly knowledgeable, but they have varying levels of confidence, and they really do not use evidence-based practice consistently. As far as teaching strategies goes, faculty have limited numbers of strategies that they use, and I think some of that is just part of learning more. So when we were talking about all this, they're like, oh yeah, we should do that, or I didn't know that was available. So some of it is educating them on strategies available, resources available, and how to use them. So we can create professional development and model how this can be incorporated. Because there's no room in the curriculum to add another course. If you've been in the community college setting, you know how condensed it can be. And of course, while the relationship of evidence-based practice, knowledge, learning experiences, and self-efficacy was not related, wasn't significant with the use, it does give an opportunity to set the stage for further research. So we could do this in a larger scale, larger population across the state or across the country, and see if the sample size would make a difference. Of course, you can get significance with any large sample size, but to see if there's consistency or something different with regards to that. But I think a lot of this hinges on whatever they've learned in school, they may not have seen it in practice to have it modeled to use. They rely a lot on their information they received in school. They rely on each other, expert opinion. They go to conferences or they go to their colleague and say, what would you do? And that's supported by the literature. So we would be no different. And that could be explaining some of this too. So with that, those are my references, and I will open it up to questions. I had to give a plug for a family in UNC Charlotte. Yes.
So I thought it was interesting in your results slide of self-efficacy and knowledge that your students' population had a higher level of self-efficacy than your faculty. I mean, it wasn't significantly off, but it was almost like their ability or their intrinsic ability, our view of themselves was like, oh yeah, I can do this, as opposed to the faculty who were just a little less confident.
I think some of that comes from their experience. So they graduate from their associate degree program, they go out and work, and like a lot of healthcare professionals, they feel like they can solve all the problems of our patients, and they feel confident in those regards. But then you ask that same respiratory therapist to go up to a physician and argue their case, they're not quite as confident. So confident to go into a room and care for a patient and make those decisions and do those certain things, yes. But when really the rubber meets the road and they have to explain it to someone else, they're a lot less confident. And I think for faculty, they understand that difference. So they've been in those shoes and they've been in teaching, and so and even when I did that, when I came out of clinical practice to go into education, I didn't have any formal teaching experience. So, but you quickly learn about the perception that you have as a faculty member. So I think some of that lends itself to the differences. I think it's a reflection piece that, no, maybe I wasn't as knowledgeable about those things, or maybe I shouldn't have been as confident about some of those things. But I have to follow up and ask that question. Yeah.
You mentioned the similarities back in the team. This is just curiosity. Is there an age difference? I'm just picturing a 21-year-old teaching 19-year-old.
So this is why this is kind of muddy. And my maybe reined me in a little bit on this, because I was comparing them, and but really in actuality, the pool that we have of educators come out of the clinical piece. So I was a respiratory therapist, and my only experience as a teacher was I was a clinical preceptor, and it qualified me enough. So I had my bachelor's degree, and I had 2 years of clinical precepting, never in a classroom, but it qualified me to be a program director. So I went into education, and that's what happens with our faculty in respiratory therapy. They come out of the clinical setting, fresh out of the clinical setting, right into a classroom. No background in teaching. And so that's why there's so much similarity between them, because their backgrounds are so similar. Their ages are similar. Faculty were slightly older, average age 45, where the students were average age 41. So community college students, we don't look like a university population. Our average age of student is older. Now, over the years, that has decreased some, because we have gotten more, and it's coming from like early college, and some of that we've seen because they see the benefit of the decreased tuition to come to the community college before they go. But it's still an older student population. And respiratory therapy, we get a lot of second, third career folks. So their years of experience were similar. Faculty did have more. There were more of the faculty that had 11 years plus, but still over half of the students had at least 11 years of work experience. I mean, there's folks that are in our BSRT program that have 20 plus years of experience, more experience than faculty. So that's why it's kind of muddy, because they all come basically from the same mold, and they just step into the teaching. Did that answer your question? Yes.
Is there a certification or licensure that they need to do once they finish their AA or their BSRT?
So the 3 levels of entry that we have into practice, an associate, bachelor's, and master's degree, they all take the same exam. So the registered respiratory therapy exam is completed by all levels. So it's the same competencies, same everything for all 3 levels. There's no difference between the credentialing piece. So we're working on that.
Is the master's an entry-level master's, or is it a post-professional?
We have both. So at UNC Charlotte, we have degree advancement, it's post-professional. But there are probably a half a dozen, or I think about a half a dozen entry-level masters. So it'd be much like athletic training. You have to have your bachelor's degree in something with certain prereqs, and you come into the entry-level masters and do 2 years full-time and be prepared to go in as a respiratory therapist, taking the same exam someone would as an associate.
So what's the benefit of going the master's route and not the community college route?
I think it's probably personal circumstances. If you are second, third year, third career, then you may want to take the associate route. You don't see yourself. Maybe you're toward the end of your career and you need an income and healthcare is stable. So you take that route. If you are looking, if you're younger or you have aspirations to go higher and do other things, then I would encourage them to go to the entry-level bachelor's or master's. Because we are starting to see a slight shift where employers are preferring the bachelor's and the master's, and we're starting to see some pay differences. But yeah, I get that question all the time. Why would I do this? And so we have to go through the spiel of why this is important to the profession too. And part of this is important for me is because I don't see us getting to that bachelor's level anytime soon as a requirement for entry. So we need to make our associate degree programs as good as we can by integrating as many of these competencies as feasible to get them ready. So when we can make that transition, it makes it easier for us. It makes the profession more likely.
Has anything changed at your program, or have you had that conversation? What's happened since you?
Okay. And there's a lot of things happening right now. So in our master's program, it's new. So we started it in 2017, and over the past couple of years, I've been in course development heaven. So I've redone each course at least twice. But I have built evidence-based practice throughout the curriculum. So they start in their very first class. Now, of course, this is at the graduate level. We do have an evidence-based practice in the bachelor's program, and we're talking about trying to infuse it more there. But they learn evidence-based practice from a management perspective. So we learn evidence-based practice across the spectrum, not just in clinical practice, but in management and leadership, how you can use it in these different pieces. At the associate degree level, I've had great conversations with the faculty. We are going to be creating professional development, so we're going to do like a hybrid. We'll do some stuff online, and then when we have our meeting in the spring, we'll do a face-to-face workshop. And then we're going to pilot some programs using what we've come out of the workshop to say, all right, who wants to pilot this in their programs? And then we want to make it widespread across all the programs. And we're hoping that by doing that, we'll be able to get some research and publication out of that. So they'll be helping me write manuscripts. And it just helps put it out there, hey, we can do some of this stuff too. We're not ever going to compete with universities. That's not the intent. But the intent is to say, here's a model, you can do this and not take away from what you feel like, because they worry about the content, not being able to get the content in time. There's so much to put into the associate degree program. How am I going to teach something extra? They're not being tested on this. True, but you can modify some things that you're having them do to incorporate these things. It gives them a better learning experience and teaches these concepts. So yeah, so we're moving. The ball's moving. Yes?
Can you talk about how is the discipline respiratory therapy positioned in the university disciplines, and how do you see the connection to kinesiology?
So respiratory therapy, we struggle as a profession, and part of that is we thrive in the community college setting because that's where we have 400 some programs and 300 some are associate programs. Universities don't always like us because we are limited enrollment, based on your clinical, and things like physician assistants, OT, PT are much more popular because now they're all at the graduate level, so that's more money. At the universities, they want those programs, so you can have a thriving respiratory program, but they're going to cut you because you're at the bachelor's level. So every time we add programs, more programs go away. So for every 2 or 3 we gain, we lose another 2 or 3. So we don't really have a net gain. But with regards to kinesiology, I don't think a lot of people realize just how much of an overlap there is between respiratory therapy and exercise science. We do a lot of everything that you can do in exercise science, respiratory therapists can do that. So we learn how to do stress testing, we do pulmonary function testing, we do the VO2 max, we do all of those things in the same settings as exercise science or exercise physiologists. The problem is when we get to cardiac rehab, they want nurses and exercise physiologists. But really, respiratory therapists are more than capable. We stay in pulmonary rehab, but we can work in those areas because we have the same background, and in some cases a lot more extensive because we work in critical care and we do metabolic studies, resting state metabolic studies to determine energy expenditure and nutritional needs for people that we can't get off life support. So we do a lot of that type of stuff. So we have to understand all the same things. But we just we're not marketed that way. We don't go into those settings because it's established that exercise physiologists and nurses run cardiac rehabs. Respiratory therapists go to pulmonary rehab. I mean, that's just the way the market works for us right now. I would love for us to be able to get in and say, oh yeah, we can do cardiac rehab. We know just as much, if not more, about congestive heart failure and myocardial infarction and all of that as a nurse or an exercise physiologist.
Is that something you hope to do with your doctorate, to move in that direction? Is that why you came here? Or?
So my ultimate goal, and we're having these conversations now, is to create an advanced practice respiratory therapy program. So we would function much like a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. We'd be that mid-level provider. So Ohio State just recently started a master's program. They don't have the licensure for it. They'll be able to practice at the top of their respiratory license. Whereas in North Carolina, we've started creating that path to licensure already. We don't have a program. But at UNC Charlotte, we are looking at starting a postmaster's program modeled after our nurse practitioners. So they would come through our master's in respiratory, and then they would go and do the postmaster's certificate where they would complete the clinical and additional assessment courses, hopefully have prescriptive rights. We're working on that now. So I'm hoping in a couple of years, so that's my goal. Is it okay?
Piggyback on Michael's question, are the people in your program learning how to stress test and learn how to do it? They're taking the exercise physiology and kinesiology or whatever you call it, so they go and take those courses there. How that work? Who's teaching them how to do all that?
So in our courses in the master's program, our master's program is 100% online. So students can come on campus if they want to. So we do have some clinical courses that go through those things, but they get that training in their entry-level program. So we don't have to supply, but we go into more detail. So they can come on campus and we can take them down to our labs and do PFTs and stress tests. We actually have masters in kinesiology students take our respiratory courses too. So
You're in the same division, right?
yes, respiratory is in our kinesiology department.
You're all right there.
covered.
Come on.
2 minutes?
Yeah. Do one of these.
We're going to
I took one, but I was gonna have to tell you to have a Mine's wherever I can wait.
Well, yeah.
So if you cut that out, you get those 2 pages. Not that slow, but it's like. Multiple things.
That's why it's, no, I don't. We have such a hard time for some reason, they left the, not included in this. Because then someone said, why don't we?
That makes sense at all.
They must have to like, city board. So nursing is not on this. So nursing.
So I would.
So you have to put those on.
I mean, I don't.
Share drive.
I think it'll make some money.